Hey, Cody Rall here. In my last video, we set the framework for Project Napoleon, the idea that digital technology is increasing in complexity at an exponential rate. This allows us to get a better idea of where technology like brain-computer interface and biofeedback technology will be within the decade. We also looked at the Brain Initiative and became aware that there are studies that are happening right now that are going to help us get there. In this video, we're going to take a more specific look at the actual biological activation patterns within the brain that correlate with psychological states. Really exciting stuff. So one of the most interesting things about this research is that using our technology, we're starting to be able to see biological correlates to psychological states, those intangibles that are described in so much literature, but was never really able to be characterized so definitely, so objectively. Things like motivation, ambition, adversity to failure. These are things that we're starting to see are correlated again in brain activity, in our physiology of our bodies. In The Winner Effect by Ian Robertson, he looks at one study that takes a look at the activation of an ancient brain structure called the putamen and links it with motivation. Now, psychologists have split motivation up into two different groups, and they've used this distinction for several years now. One group is intrinsic motivation. The other group is extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation has to do with external motivators, including money, good grades, status, whereas intrinsic motivation has to do with self-fulfillment, a self-feeling good about actually doing the activity and continuing to do the activity and improve on it simply just because you enjoy doing it. Now, what they did in Japan in the study that was in The Winner Effect was divide students into two different groups. They underwent the same cognitive memory test, but one group was told that it was for money, that the better that they did on the cognitive test, the more money that they would get at the end of the test. And the other group were simply told it was an IQ test. You can imagine that the IQ test group had more of an intrinsic motivation. So before the experiment, they had both groups take the same screening test. Now the screening test was designed to measure their level of ambition. The questions are as follows. Number one, do you prioritize getting ahead more than having a comfortable life? Number two, in work, does the thought of performing about the same as others bother you? Number three, if you feel like you are wasting time, does this make you restless and uneasy? Number four, do you always try to be the best at what you do? Number five, would you choose to work with a difficult but talented coworker over a pleasant but less competent one? Number six, are you ambitious? Number seven, does the thought of, quote, taking life as it comes make you uneasy? Number eight, do you plan ahead in your career? Number nine, would you strongly resent being described as, quote, lazy? Number 10, do you feel at all, quote, driven? Now these questions were designed in order to level the amount of ambition in these students. As you can imagine, students that answered yes to every question are very type A. They'd probably come off as abrasive, but it doesn't come over the fact that it's measuring levels of ambition. What was amazing in this study was that they could see, based on whether someone was extrinsically motivated or intrinsically motivated, if their brain was physiologically primed to be engaged in the task. And as you can guess, the intrinsically motivated students, the ones that were told that they were undergoing an IQ test, showed levels of activation within an ancient brain structure called the putamen correlated with the amount of ambition that they had. That is profound. That means that their physiology is responding to the psychological state of ambition. As Ian Robertson so eloquently put in his book, that notion that people are physiologically primed to succeed, according to how ambitious they are, is true. The levels of activation in the brain are literally responding to that psychological state of ambition. What does that mean? That means that people that are more ambitious, their bodies, their minds, their brains are behind them. That grit that it takes to every day knock out task after task to get you closer to your goals, to that full realization of your worthy ideal, is backed up by your physiology, your body. The very expression of genes, how your brain's turned on, is all responding to this. That's why people say attitude is the most important thing in any endeavor. And I think that's really reflected in studies like this. Now, how can we use exponential technology to understand this better? Well, I think that brain scans, brain-computer interface, all this technology can be used to look at things like the putamen activation in order to allow people to gather more objective data on things like motivation, ambition, adversity to failure, things that allow people to reach their highest potential, both benefiting themselves and society at large. I can imagine a future where students in education could undergo different cognitive tasks using technology, allowing us to understand what really motivates them. Maybe this student over here, their putamen is activated by math and science. Maybe this student over here, their putamen is activated by literature and writing. And having that information will allow us to understand what really motivates individual people, because I think that people have individual personalities, temperaments that cause them to be more gravitated towards one subject or the other. And really being able to understand that will help foster that development. And that would benefit everybody. That would allow people to engage in tasks that Napoleon Hill would call a labor of love, tasks that they really enjoy, that they can get their full physiology behind and really improve their lives so much. It really gives us some perspective, I think, on things like politics, businesses, schools, and allows us to understand better what really motivates people. It's that intrinsic motivation. The challenge is finding that for people, allowing people to discover what really intrinsically motivates them. And again, that's what Project Napoleon is all about. Project Napoleon is about looking at brain activation patterns and other biomarkers and gaining knowledge in that area that allows us to understand people better, to allow us to understand motivation better, and to foster that development. And that was seen in this study, that the students that were intrinsically motivated simply to increase their IQ, they weren't offered more money or anything, were more physiologically primed to succeed, more physiologically engaged within the test in order to better themselves. I think, again, we can have a future that uses exponential technology to allow us to gain more objective data to understand that better. That's what Project Napoleon is all about. It's about finding brain activation patterns and other biomarkers that allow us to understand motivation, allow us to understand self-fulfillment, allow us to understand self-development, and to bring those, democratize that information so that people can benefit from it. And we'll be having more videos coming soon on different biomarkers that allow us to understand motivation, ambition, adversity to failure, and those other things that allow people to reach their worthy ideals. It's Cody Rall. Thanks so much for the listen. Please comment on the video. I'm interested to hear what everybody thinks, and I'll have more videos coming to you. Until next time.